21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
The first company that I exited almost cost me my life. Yeah, it literally did. I was doing everything myself, and I was still, a one-man show. I was making a couple $1 million a year, which was great, right? But, that only goes so far. I was wearing every single hat. I was answering every customer service email. I was doing da. And, it got to a point where the culmination happened where they thought I had a stroke. I was rushed to the hospital. And, it was at that point that I learned, okay, something has to change. And so that was when I learned how to delegate. My name is Kille, and I am the founder of EO Staff in Boston, Massachusetts. And I help high-performing entrepreneurs get out of their own way, scale their company with the help of systems, processes, and virtual assistants. One of the things, if I'm doing consultative, we talk about 93% of business owners or businesses in America never reach $1 million in revenue. And even less than that, I believe it's 10% of that, ever make it to 5. So most people, whenever they're starting a business, their goal is to get to $1 million, right? That's and what's great about this country, what's great about this economy is that right now, especially with AI, you can do that by yourself. But now the game is, how do I get to 5? How do I get to 10? How do I get to 20 or more? And that is where systems and processes come into play, because now you can't do it by yourself. Well, I don't know. With AI, I think we're going to see the first solo billionaire here soon because of AI. But taking AI out of the equation, it's almost impossible to get to that, to that mid 7 figures, by yourself. And so that's where becoming a leader is more important than being good at sales or being good at fulfillment, because you have to, to unlock that next step, you have to have systems and processes in place. You have to be able to build other leaders, because without that, you'll be stuck at, 1 to 2 million by yourself forever. I've exited 3 companies, okay? And my first one was whenever I was 5 years into the business. It was a merchant services company. It wasn't a huge exit, but it was enough that I learned a lot, right? It was the private equity company that was buying me. It was a small acquisition that we had. But what I learned during that time was it was a very transactional transaction at that point. It was a very one-sided transaction in terms of I was just essentially selling a book of business to them. I missed out on a lot of money. I missed out on a massive multiplier because I didn't have the systems and processes in place. I didn't have a team. I didn't really have anything except for me I could sell. And that was essentially, so if you look at it, I sold a book of business, essentially. And so that was the first company that I sold. And I learned something. I said, if you don't have assets, if you don't have software, if you don't have systems and processes, and if your company is founder dependent, it's almost impossible to get the multiplier that a lot of people think. They think most people think their business is worth a lot more than it actually is. And, I understand I was in the same position too, but when you look at it from an outside investment perspective, like for instance, the company that I most recently sold, again, it was another merchant service company. But this time when I came back to it, I had the full team built out. I had all the systems and processes completely documented. I had every single workflow from a sales, from a customer service, from an onboarding, from a tech standpoint. We had a piece of software that went with it. It was completely built out, and I was able to sell it to another credit card processing company, a bigger one. And what was attractive to them about that was they bought the company and they didn't have to do anything with it, right? Nobody got laid off. They didn't even change the name. They just took it, bolted it onto their company. And all of a sudden, it just continued to make money. So it was a great investment for them. And also, I had already completely, essentially removed myself from that company entirely. So most of our clients didn't even know who I was at that point. So founder, non-dependent at all. I had zero to do with with any of the day-to-day operations, which was fantastic. And that was because I learned how to delegate. I learned how to grow a team. And that company was the reason that I almost had, they thought they had a stroke. It was so much stress that I was like, I have to get this off of my plate or I will die. And so that's where I learned how to delegate. I learned how to build a team. And because of that, that company became so much more valuable to somebody else. Because if you're trying to sell your company, if you want to make an exit, you have to look at it from their shoes. Somebody wants to spend money. They want to do the least amount of work possible, and they want to get the highest return possible if they can. So if you are your company and everything runs through you and something happens to you, then that's a house of cards that falls over, and nobody wants to buy that. EO Staff started for fun, essentially. I had no plans of ever getting into this business. I did not want to be a staffing company. I didn't want to work with, I didn't want to be an international, multinational company with clients all over the world, but it worked out that way. And what happened was I had learned how to build a team of Filipino virtual assistants for myself, right? I went on to onlinejobs.ph, like what most people do, and I put my job ad out, and I went through hundreds, if not thousands, of resumes to find the people that, and I built my team piece by piece. And it was really, really hard, right? Because you have to, not only do you have to, hiring is hard to begin with, but now you're talking to somebody that's on the other side of the world that you've never met, that you probably never will meet. Sometimes there's a language barrier. There's different cultural differences. For instance, a lot of people from the Philippines are very passive. And, knowing me right now, you can tell my communication style, very direct. And so it was a challenge for me to be able to build a team out there. But when I did, I saw the return on my time that I got. And I saw the return on my, investment. Obviously, if you can find somebody over there to do a job that's just as good, if not better, for $30,000 a year than somebody here that's $80,000 or $90,000 here in the States, and you're a business owner that doesn't have a lot of cash, why wouldn't you? Okay, and so it started off where I started building my team that way, and then I was with one of my friends, Paul, at a dinner one time, and he was saying, "Hey, you always noticed that my energy was different." And I told him, I said, "Hey, I found out about virtual assistants from the Philippines." He's like, "That sounds awesome. What is it?" And I explained to him the process, and he was like, "Man, I would love to I want to get one of those for my business too." I said, "Cool, I got you." So I helped him hire one. Right. And then he introduced me to one of his friends, and I helped that person, and then that person. And then all of a sudden it came into where I was like, you know what, this is a lot of fun. And I actually am, this is, my other company, I was fighting over fractions of pennies with people who didn't appreciate me ever. Whenever they called to reach out, it was never, "Hey, Chris, that's a great job." It was never a thing. It was, "You're charging me too much money. Where is my money?" It was always a fight anytime that run. Whereas in this industry, I'm now able to provide an opportunity to somebody on the other side of the world that otherwise wouldn't have had it, to work with a fantastic business owner. And I'm able to help a business owner that was in the shoes that I was, maybe struggling to make payroll. Maybe you need to hire somebody, but you can't afford the right one. So it's like you just keep hiring bad hire after bad hire. And I lived that life, so I know how frustrating it is. So to be able to provide somebody that's an entrepreneur here in the States, match those two up, and actually watch that that relationship develop and their business grow as a result of it, is incredibly rewarding for me. And one thing happened, one thing led to the next, and now we're doing multi-seven figures a year. There is a process that we follow internally, and that all of our clients, our successful clients, follow as well. So when you're starting out in business, right, you usually don't have a lot of money. Most people don't have investors. Most people are bootstrapping, right? And so they're looking to cut corners and save money anywhere that they can. And a lot of times it's a founder trap. And what they'll do is they'll say, "You know what? I have enough time on my plate right now that I can just do this, or nobody else can do it as good as me. Or, it's so you lead yourself into this trap because initially, yes, you do have the time to do it. But as you start to grow, now all of a sudden you may not have that time. You have less and less of that time. So you end up actually building yourself into this trap, painting yourself into a corner where I'm the only one who can do this because I'm the only one who has done it. I don't have time, but it needs to get done. And so what ends up happening is that bleeds over into a lot of areas of your life. It's not healthy. And so we actually have there's a ladder that there's a ladder that should be followed in the most successful businesses. And you as the owner, it is your job to replace yourself every step along the way. And so most people, they hop in, everybody comes to me, Chris, I need a sales rep. I'm like, cool, yeah, but you know what? You are the sales rep, right? You're the one that can sell your company. You're the one that can sell it better than anybody else. You don't have a ton of leads coming in. You still have to fulfill. You have to keep your life organized as well. So while that seems like a great idea on paper, typically hiring a sales rep first is one of the worst things you can do, because again, now you, the entrepreneur, the founder, are now acting as an admin, supporting that sales rep to continue to feed them. Everything they still sell needs to be fulfilled. Paperwork needs to be done. Everything that goes along with that revenue is still there. You don't have anybody in the back to do it. So what we recommend is we start off, you replace yourself in the administrative positions first. So all the paperwork that you have to do, keeping your inbox clean. A lot of us get 300-400 emails a day. Even if it's only 50 emails a day, that still takes about an hour to get through. Being able to curate responses and make sure that things aren't being ignored, make sure that things aren't getting missing opportunities. You still have to follow up with leads. You still have to keep your CRM organized. There's so many different things that you as the business owner, you're wearing on your shoulders, and you don't think it's a big deal until you see how big of a deal it is when you actually write it out. And so the first hire should be an admin that should be able to help you, the business owner, get out of your own way so then you can then go generate more revenue. After that point, we recommend that's when you can hire a customer service rep. So first you hire admin, and then a CSR comes in, because as you continue to bring in new customers, right? Somebody needs to support them. Somebody needs to onboard them. And it can't always be you. Your customers shouldn't have your cell phone number. And this is another area where business owners fall into a trap, is because they say, my customers need me. They won't work with me unless, they buy your standard, not your presence. So you can have somebody. That was very, very hard for me to let go initially. But if I hadn't let that part go, the business would still be founder dependent. I would have not gotten a multiplier anywhere near that I did, because my business would still revolve around you. So as you're growing a business, it seems counterintuitive, but you should be stepping farther and farther away, from a day-to-day standpoint, because as the CEO of the business, you're the one that's driving the car. You need to be responsible for other things. So as you're replacing yourself during this process, the very first thing that we recommend get done is admin. Get all that stuff off of your plate. Have somebody that's right in your corner, side by side, keeping you organized and making sure that the stuff's actually getting done. From there, customer service, somebody's got to take care of the customers. From there, at that point, marketing, somebody's got to go get you leads. So now you can start spending money with a marketing or an advertising company to make that bell ring. You're still handling sales at this point, right? Once you have enough leads and you're doing it, and you have a point where you can no longer handle all the sales calls, that's when you bring in another sales rep, right? And then from there, now you're able to really take a step back, because your revenue engine's going, leads aren't slipping through the cracks, customers are happy, and your business is running behind the scenes without you being involved in every detail. The best leaders in the world are the best at delegation. Okay, you show me a founder that keeps everything to themselves, and I'll show you somebody that's not going to succeed. You're not going to scratch the surface of what your potential is. And a lot of people, again, they go back to that, nobody can do it better than me, or I'm the only one that can do this. And listen, that may be the case in a very small instance, but if you can build out a standard operating procedure, which you should know how to do anyway if you own a business, and if you're not sure what that is, it's a checklist on how to do everything, right? And so, being able to hand that off to somebody, here's how we do this, a step-by-step process, here's how we check the email, here's how we onboard a customer, whatever it is, there should be an SOP beside it, step-by-step instructions that can be handed off to somebody else. And also, Martin, 80% done by somebody else is 100% awesome. So, a lot of times business owners, I was on the phone with somebody earlier today. They're like, this person's not going to be able to do as good as me. I'm like, I know, right? That's okay. It's still going to get done. You don't have to do this anymore. You can now go focus on growing the company and doing and getting the bigger things. And so being able to delegate effectively, it all comes down to, having clear communication channels, making sure expectations are set properly, and then having checks and balances, because you can't just say, hey, go do this, and then expect it to get done the first time, right? There needs to be checks and balances and coaching involved, and, spending a little bit of work up front to make sure that you never have to do something again. Somebody else owns this will save you thousands of hours over the course of your life. Systems matter more than people. Let me give you a concrete example of this. Recently, we went through some churn in my company. Okay, there were some areas that that we identified that needed immediate attention, and we had some people that exited our team, and and that happens. Okay, and as unfortunate as it was, we were left with in one of our departments only one intern. Right. And we were like, oh, okay, this could be bad, but it wasn't. Okay. And the stress test proved great for us because our systems were so strong that even though the person was an intern and had almost no experience, we gave them the manual. Here's how you drive the car. Here's exactly how things are done step by step. And guess what? She is doing a better job now than the 4 people that were on that team were doing whenever they were here, because she's actually following the instructions. Part of the reason why that department got off track was because people stopped following the SOPs. They thought they were smart. They thought we've been here a long time. We know how to do this. And they got away from the actual plan. They got away from the instructions. And so now we're actually looking at this now. We're like, we don't know if we need to replace those 4 people, right? Because we found out that one person with clear systems and processes and a clear manual is able to do the work that 4 people were able to do before more accurately. And so we learned that, okay, if an intern can do this with great instructions, then hey, we're onto something here. The difference between my life 5 years ago and my life today is black and white, okay? Nearly dying taught me that work is not the end-all be-all of life. There's a whole lot more to what we need to be doing here on this earth than just be hanging around your laptop all day. And learning how to delegate and how to build a remote team was what bought me my freedom. Not only was it able to help me exit my company at a ridiculous multiplier, which is incredible. I'm so thankful for that. But being able to build my next company using those same lessons, using those same teachings. And so I went from working like 80, 90 hours a week, sometimes 100 hours a week in a very stressful situation. I still work 20 hours a week. I'd say 20, 25 hours a week, but now I'm focused on big picture. Right. So, I enjoy my life again. I'm not stressed out all the time. When I'm with my family, I'm with my family. I don't have my cell phone with me. Cell phone goes up at night. And, where I'm not messing with work, it can wait until tomorrow, or somebody else, on my team has got it handled. And because of that, right, I spend time at my lake house now, right? I'm up here right now, and it's the lake is frozen. I'm probably going to go ice skating, this afternoon once we get out. And, it's things like that. I have time to enjoy my life now. I walk with my dogs. I'm a lot more healthy. I've lost a lot of weight because the stress isn't there. I'm sleeping better. I'm working out a lot more. And, my life is just a whole lot more enjoyable now. And it was because I learned how to delegate and building the team around me. using a team of virtual assistants from the Philippines was the tool that I used to get there, right? I didn't, I just followed the blueprint that I built many, many times before. It works for me, it's worked for my friends, it's worked for all of our clients. And one of the most common questions I get from people is, Chris, that all sounds great. What exactly can a virtual assistant do for me? Right? Because they think, maybe it's AI, maybe it's Alexa, maybe it's, they're not quite sure until they see it. And I say, that's a great question. And so we actually put together a guide. It's called the Ultimate Guide to Virtual Assistants. And it is a comprehensive document, start to finish, where they are, how you find them, what they're, tell us about their culture, some of the things that they can do, the most common uses, how to pay them. It's basically anything you could ever think of from an educational standpoint of how this might be able to help me in my business or just in my overall life in general is included in this document. And the easiest way to get it is to follow me on Instagram. So this I am Chris Kille, IAMCHRISKILLE, and just DM me the word ultimate, and I'll have somebody from my team send it over to you right away.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.